We have been covering ever since last night the plane crash that occurred Friday on the South Carolina-Georgia line east of Clemson. That crash claiming the lives of 4 men from our area. Among the dead, 71-year-old Charlie Smith, who was piloting the plane. He had a long history of public service in Kosciuszko County. His son, 44-year-old Scott Smith, who was a Warsaw attorney, was in the co-pilot seat and died with his dad. 54-year-old Tony Elliott of Warsaw also died. He was a passenger on the plane. He was a sprint car driver well known in racing circles. And 51-year-old Scott Bibler of Warsaw, also on the plane. He was a counselor for a private agency, but previously had put in a long career as a coach and counselor at Tippy Valley. Well, before the start of tonight's game, Clemson recognized all 4 men killed in that crash. The NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, is now in charge of releasing information about what happened. And an NTSB spokesman says the wreckage is still in place. Recovery won't begin until next week. That process could even include searching a lake in the area for pieces of the wreckage. He also says the pilot, Charlie Smith, was flying with instruments at the time, indicating that it was cloudy, and Smith would have been totally reliant on those instruments to fly the plane at the time of the crash. However, at this point, officials are not commenting on what, if any, role weather may have played. We're going to have much more on the crash and on the men who perished. Comprehensive coverage of the plane crash that killed 4 Warsaw men. The pilot and the oldest of the group was Charlie Smith, an icon in the Warsaw area. He'd been a teacher and coach at Tippy Valley. He went on to a successful banking career, and he also served for years on the Warsaw Common Council. WSBT-22's Heather Black is just back from Warsaw, and she joins us now from the live desk. Heather?
Diane, people we spoke to today who knew Charlie described him as being someone who impacted Warsaw with his love for the community and for those around him.
Charlie was really the best this community has to offer.
David Finley, the president and CEO of Lake City Bank in Warsaw, worked with Charlie Smith for 11 years. He reflected on the legacy his friend left behind and his reaction when he heard the news.
My first thoughts went to his wife, Ann, and his daughter, Michelle, and his son, Ryan.
This is the airport in Warsaw from which the 4 men departed Friday. It was around 3:15 Friday when the Piper PA-32R plane crashed in a remote wooded area near Lake Hartwell on the South Carolina-Georgia line. Finley says Smith's passion was seen in every part of his life.
As a city councilman, he's been very active in politics, but more importantly, he's been active in every aspect of this community.
Smith may have finished his football coaching career in 1983, but Finley says Smith shared his coaching skills with everyone he met.
He had a drive, he had a commitment, he brought it every day to work, he took it with him everywhere he went. His greatest skill set that came out of that coaching experience was ability to mentor people and to teach people and to really make the most out of the people he was given.
Inside the council chambers in Warsaw, Charlie's nameplate sits in front of the council seat he occupied for 4 terms. Warsaw Mayor Joe Tolmer visited the families of each of the victims this morning. He remembers Charlie as a progressive, passionate leader who was all about Warsaw.
He was intense. He loved to be out on the lake. He loved to fly. He loved Notre Dame. And he was, of course, on his way to the Notre Dame game this weekend, which he went to all the games, home and away. You know, he just was a friend that would do anything for you, but also wasn't afraid to tell you what he thought.
And David Finley with Lake City Bank says Smith just started flying about 7 years ago. Smith also served in countless other positions on commissions and boards for various agencies in Kosciuszko County. At the live desk, Heather Black, WSBT-22 News.
All right, thank you, Heather. Well, now a look at Charlie Smith's son, Scott. He shared his dad's love of football and Notre Dame, and he also died in the crash. Outside of his law practice in Warsaw today, someone placed a flower and balloon outside the doors at a makeshift memorial of sorts. Prior to practicing law in Warsaw, Scott had worked with the St. Joseph County Prosecutor's Office in South Bend. A former co-worker describes him as a champion of the people.
Very, very good attorney. Everyone kind of knew that he was going to be a rising star in the legal profession, for sure, you know. So he was someone that was firm with the law, but also someone that, in my mind, I thought he would be a judge someday.
And Scott Smith was engaged to be married. Well, just like his dad, Scott also had ties to the Tippecanoe Valley school system. He graduated from there, and it is also the school where another one of the victims, 51-year-old Scott Bibler, made his mark as a football coach and a counselor. This morning at the Tippy Valley High School, counselors and pastors were on hand to help those who were grieving.
We're going to heal from this, and we're going to have to come together as a family and get together and say goodbye to a great person, and Coach Bibler. And
Scott Bibler had recently just left his post at the school as a counselor and football coach to go to work as a counselor with a private agency. This was done in part, according to the superintendent, as a reaction to a youth suicide epidemic that's hit this small, tight-knit community.
Probably of the people that I've known in my lifetime, I don't know that I've ever known a man that was more caring, more sincere, more genuine than Scott Bibler. He was a man of faith, lived his faith every day. And I mean, that's the only comfort that can come from a situation like this, as we know where Scott is now.
Outside the school, where people gathered for counseling today to cope with the 4 deaths, were the football stands where Charlie Smith first coached and where more recently Scott Bibler coached.
I've heard people at times say as a football coach, well, he was too nice. And you know, I don't know if I would agree with that or not. I don't know that you can ever care too much, but he did sincerely care about kids, whether they were football players or not.
Scott Bibler is survived by his wife Stephanie and daughters Megan and Chelsea. And this coming Monday, counselors and area pastors will be back at Tippy Valley High School. They will be there to assist students and staff in dealing with their grief. Well, the racing community is in mourning and sharing their thoughts on the death of 54-year-old Tony Elliott. He was the sprint car driver from Warsaw who was on that plane. Hoosier Racing Tire shared a post on Facebook saying, quote, "Tony was a great person and competitor both on and off the track. He will be greatly missed in the racing community, but he will never be forgotten for what he did for racing." NASCAR stars like Tony Stewart and Casey Kane are remembering Elliott on social media. Kane tweeted about Elliott's death, saying he was a great guy who always had a smile on his face. "We had a lot of good races together." The county coroner handling these cases in South Carolina says that tomorrow autopsies will be performed on Charlie Smith and Scott Smith. Monday, autopsies are scheduled for Scott Bibler and Tony Elliott. Stay with us here on WSBT 22, both on air and online. We will continue to have the very latest on this developing story, and we'll continue to provide you with the latest on the deaths of these 4 men and tell you how the communities where they lived are now working to carry on their legacies. And stay with